Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome you once again this evening to the airwaves of Salam Media. It is Wednesday night. It is Talk with myself, United Warriors. We welcome our viewers or listeners on the various platforms of Salam Media. Wonderful that you're able to join us. Now, there are two issues that we will be focusing from now right until 9 p.m. This evening. The first hour is going to be dedicated to BRICS and the summit that was held in Kazan in Russia. And clearly, a number of issues had actually come out. And more importantly, just to understand what does this mean. Now, we know the term Global South is featuring a lot more prominently of late, and also looking at a new economic world and how this world is going to adjust to what is called a new BRICS reality. Now, citing the global dominance of the United States of America, and many are saying that that dominance is over the United States of America and Western Europe. But we've seen the US, even in the build up to the elections that are due to take place next week, saying that they do not have to worry about BRICS. And that's on a global level. But again, taking a look at it from a South African perspective as well, you will recall South Africa held the BRICS summit last year, and some are actually saying that South Africa has actually missed critical openings in BRICS, so that we could benefit from BRICS, from bilateral trade relations and over infrastructure development. Now, all of this playing out, we know that a number of key resolutions were taken in South Africa, and these resolutions were taken in Kazan in Russia as well. The question is, looking at South Africa, and we've seen even President Cyril Ramaphosa emphasizing the need for a recalibration of trade rules to support industry, mineral resources in BRICS countries as well, and also a closer look at the BRICS Bank under the leadership of the chair of the New Development Bank as well. So there is just so much that actually came out, but it is playing out here on a global level. And we've seen the Kazan Declaration emphasizing the fundamental role of energy access, highlighting the need for enhanced cooperation amongst BRICS nations. And we know we've got an expanded BRICS as well, representing a fair amount of the world population. So all of this playing out, and as a result, we are talking this evening. We've got a number of guests that are lined up. Hopefully, we will be joined shortly by Crown Prince Adil Nchabeleng, energy expert, the chairperson of the BRICS Steering Committee, now member of the BRICS Bank Civil Committee, Owen Ndidi, and also joined by Raymond Matlala, chairman of South African BRICS Youth Association, global co-chair, global leadership entrepreneurship network. Raymond is a doctoral candidate in business administration at the Vaal University of Technology. I see Raymond is on the screen, and we see Owen Ndidi as well on screen. Raymond, good evening to you and welcome to the show.
Good evening, and thank you for having me. Good evening to the listeners as well as the viewers wherever they are watching.
Yes, and also Owen Ndidi, we thank you for your time. Good evening to you and welcome. I see Owen's mic seems to be muted. If you could unmute your mic, please, Owen. Okay, Raymond, I think while we are, Owen obviously possibly some technical problem, but I think let us just continue. And I think I just want to do a bit of a recap. You know, last year, South Africa held the BRICS summit, and there was a lot of hope, in fact. And also at the same time, we've seen how BRICS has expanded since last year in terms of its membership. And it is becoming very, very clear that we see this divide now. We see BRICS on the one side, the global south. We've got America. And the point I had made in my introduction is America losing its dominance very, very fast, although it's saying BRICS is a non entity. Just your thoughts and looking at BRICS and how BRICS has evolved and grown over a period of time.
Yeah, thank you for that question. Look, I think what BRICS has been echoing in terms of their stance is that they're not just a membership at the time, a membership of just 5 nations and now 9 countries, of course, waiting for Saudi Arabia to officially accept or reject the invitation. But essentially, BRICS has been saying that they represent the global south, particularly in the global order in multilateral institutions such as your UN Security Council, your World Bank, as well as the IMF, and so forth and so on. So essentially, is BRICS wants to have all, especially developing countries, being involved and being considered and consulted and being part of the decision-making processes of the multilateral inside the multilateral institutions.
Yes. Now, we know that this is, at this point in time, a lot is about the numbers game, Raymond, where we're talking about BRICS and the expansion of BRICS. We know this now includes 43% of the world population. This is a sizable, almost half the world population represented by BRICS. And one obviously need to recognize that this represents huge numbers, but also the power a forum like BRICS is able to wield on a global level.
Yeah, of course. I mean, not only the population, but if you look at BRICS now, it has surpassed in terms of GDP the G7. I mean, the G7, you would know that is your top 7 developed countries in the world, and so even though combined with BRICS, with just 9 member states, with developing members, they still surpass the G7 in terms of the GDP. And not only that, also, if you look at the fossil fuel that now the BRICS member states have in terms of their reserves and the member countries, if combined, it also provides for the most fossil fuel reserves in terms of supplying the globe. So essentially, BRICS is heading towards cumulative growth in terms of their member states and in terms of the resources that are required by the world, and of course, the buying power of the populations that are in the BRICS member states.
Yes. Now, also just looking at the global dynamics, Raymond, that are playing out right across the entire world, and this divide between the global south and the global north. Now, looking at BRICS, looking at the BRICS summit, looking at the BRICS membership as well, how historic is this as a turning point in terms of how the global dynamics are actually looked at in more ways than one? And I know we talk about things like climate change, we talk about economies, we talk about development as well. But at the end of the day, is this going to be a major turning point in terms of how this world is going to operate with a BRICS that obviously has got numbers? You mentioned the GDP as well, surpassing the G7 countries. All of this actually put together, and just to see how powerful a force BRICS can be in the world, and obviously also to change the global hegemony of Western nations in the United States of America.
Yeah, look, I mean, it's ultimately, and what the BRICS has been saying is that we're not here to replace anyone. What we're here to do is to create an alternative, particularly for the developing world. It's like in business, right? So there is a your let's take motor vehicles. Now that in South Africa there is a Chinese brands that are getting into the South African market with cheaper SUVs. And now, what the Chinese have seen is that, and I'm using this as an example. The Chinese have seen is that people would like to drive SUVs, but they cannot afford them with your typical brands. So they're bringing in an alternative in the similar scheme of things, an SUV with the features that your typical SUV from your traditional motor vehicles and industry would provide. at the lower rate. And that's what BRICS is saying, is that instead of the world and the member states going into the IMF and the World Bank to secure loans for development with attached conditions, they would rather come to BRICS, the new development bank. There's no conditions. Even now, the development bank has started borrowing member states with their own currencies. Of course, that also takes away the exchange rate difference there, where you have to now secure the dollar in order to repay that loan. So it's those kind of alternative that BRICS is providing. And maybe also to say, the global order has just been towards one-sided, with the UN Security Council, the IMF, the World Bank, WHO, and WTO. I mean, we've seen during COVID how WHO operated in terms of vaccines, and not recognize Russian vaccine, but recognize certain countries' vaccine, whereas there was no any substantial or significant, even scientific results in terms of why. And after the myth of COVID, we've seen a certain vaccine from a certain global north country being with how it has so many side effects which were not revealed during that period. So you can see that BRICS is saying we want to provide an alternative for developing countries to be part of a particular grouping, to have a belonging, to have a sense of belonging, and also working on consensus to have a voice that is equal to everyone, not having a suppressed voice in a way that you're going to UN Security Council, you vote. 13 members can vote yes for ceasefire in Israel and Palestine, and one country can then veto power that particular vote.
Yes, I think you raise a very, very important point here, Raymond, in terms of the imbalance and the global imbalance as far as global institutions are concerned. And in more ways than one, we on the United Nations, the Security Council, veto powers is just one aspect. But I know you've made some reference now to institutions like the World Bank, like the IMF, and particularly looking at the global south, looking at developing nations, looking at the African continent as well. Now, for many, many years, for a long time, Western Europe, the United States of America, the former colonial powers have had a huge footprint on the African continent. We know to a large extent with disastrous impact as well. And again, coupled with all these conditions that you speak about, the likes of the IMF, World Bank, loans, trying to bail out, many of these countries. And something had to give at some point in time where this imbalance could not continue or it couldn't be sustained for a very long time.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I mean, a similar example with South Africa. We were colonized, and after colonization, there was an apartheid system, but it could not be sustained. I mean, we now live in a democracy where we even live in a GNU, government of national unity today, because the absolute majority could not be sustained. So they come at times where a particular system it's not sustainable, and it has to change. And I think the BRICS members came up with that. And even when you look at the expansion plans, started with 4, 5, now initially it was 11, of course, with Argentina rejecting, and now Saudi have not yet given a formal response. It's a way of more inclusive voice. And if you look at the expansion, it also looked at regional integration. So BRICS did not have a Middle East representation in its formation, and with the expansion last year, which now began officially January this year, also included that. Also in the continent, I mean, BRICS in the continent only had South Africa and now there's two more member states that sits in the continent, one in the north and one is one in the west, one in the west. Yeah. So you can see how the even in Latin America, I mean Argentina and Brazil in that region as well, and China and India in Asia. So you can see the integration that they want to bring using regional kind of regional influential countries in those regions as a start. South Africa in the southern hemisphere of the continent, Egypt in the northern hemisphere of the continent, and of course, there's a debate there with Ethiopia and Nigeria. But of course, there are semantics that one looks at in making that decision. So what I'm saying is that in the course to change the global order, BRICS is saying, as we've been saying, that ours is to represent the global south, the voiceless, and then of course we need to get all the regions, particularly of the world, as a start to speak with one voice in these multilateral platforms.
Raymond, within BRICS, obviously we've got two powerhouses, and we can consider them powerhouses. We've got Russia and you've got China. And in terms of how influential Russia and China be to the greater cause and the greater agenda that BRICS is trying to achieve.
Sorry, I think I've lost you. Wait.
Raymond, can you hear me?
Yeah, you are back now.
Yes, what I'm saying is within BRICS, we've got two powerhouses in Russia and China. And we can obviously consider them as global powers. They are superpowers in their own right as well. And just to look at the contribution that both Russia and China can actually bring to a BRICS forum and to the benefit of all the other member states of BRICS as well, and to the global south in general.
Yeah, look, I mean, I hear they might be power houses or power countries in their respective regions, but when it comes to BRICS, it operates quite differently, and you'd have seen it during the South African chair. Is that South African chair decide and determines the agenda, and of course consult with the BRICS member states in terms of, for example, a just transition, for example, wouldn't be a BRICS concept in all honesty, but it wasn't the South African agenda. So that actually shows that so China and Russia does not influence the agenda, and the reason is, I mean, I use South Africa as an example with all the three chairship that we've held, and of course also having been involved in this two quite more involved in the two chairship which we've held. We've never had Chinese or Russians influencing any of our agenda, particularly in the youth space, in the civil space, where we're quite involved, and that also to say, that's what the perception of what a lot of people think that. Oh, so for example, the issue of de-dollarization. BRICS has never even announced a de-dollarization project in its all declarations or in all its formal statements. The de-dollarization statement would come from your Russia as per se. But what BRICS is saying is that, look, we want to have kind of a self-reliant, and we want to also have opportunity to move around with trade, and therefore, can we start exploring the use of local currencies as part of our trade? And that is the conversations that are happening at that level in terms of I mean, if Russia had really power, it means the de-dollarization project would be explicit within the BRICS agenda. If China had the power, the economic trades and conditions of BRICS member states towards that of the global north would have been different in terms of the BRICS agenda. So each country would have the agenda, and of course consult with other member states, and then they would revert. Maybe just before I close, I just want to give one example here is that this year we were able to, for a very first time after 15 years, able to have the BRICS Civil BRICS Council being endorsed by heads of states. And of course, we know there were skepticalities in other member states. But because of the consensus driven, even one of those would be what you call the superpower in the BRICS and influencing the agenda. We're not a bit comfortable, but after discussions and engagement, consensus was reached that let us do this. So I'm just saying, in the BRICS, everyone come in an equal footing.
Yes, Raven, I see Crown Prince Adil Nchabeleng has joined us as well, energy expert. Adil, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome.
Walaikum salam, and thank you so much.
Yes, we're just getting, in fact, Raymond and I have been talking about and provided an overview and looking at BRICS, looking at the Kazan forum that had taken place as well. Adil, just in terms of what has come out of Kazan at this point in time, and you and I met up on a Saturday, I think, and we had a brief discussion, and you said, we need to talk about BRICS, just to get some of your thoughts initially, and then we can take the discussion further.
Thank you so much, Brother Inayat, as well as Raymond. And really, for me, the BRICS summit, this was actually a watershed summit in the sense that, one, there were key issues that came out as major resolutions out of this BRICS summit on 2024. If you could recall, last year it was hosted in South Africa, and South Africa was the major host. And in that, South Africa made a lot of pledges and promises, and for the first time, there were many countries that were invited to come and join the BRICS country partners alliance program. And as a result, most of those countries were given a year to be admitted into BRICS officially. And now with the finalization and outcome of the current BRICS, those partners have been admitted. And when I reflected upon it, I found it to be an incredible organization that will soon, if the United Nations does not play its role, you're going to find that BRICS will have a much more informing role to that which is akin and really aligned to what BRICS is doing, whereby BRICS will start becoming the universal voice of the downtrodden, the countries and states that are currently under all sorts of heavy embargoes from the current hegemony of the US, as well as the Western imperial civilization that is currently driven by the London, as well as the European Union groups. So there's a huge shift globally towards being a unilateral environment whereby country states are being dictated by one major dominant political power, which in this case is the US, as well as the European Union in the current scenario. But what happened at BRICS is these are countries that have already been sidelined out of the G7, out of the G20, out of the current United Nations critical dialogue and decision making, even the security level in terms of security decisions. And they are now forming an alliance of strength to say, since we are the weakest in the link with regards to how we are treated within the BRICS, within the United Nations, League of Countries, we feel that it is within our right to now strengthen our bond and relationships and come together closer to one another in order to provide a global solution and an alternative to the current crisis that is actually plaguing the whole world. If you're fully aware, you would know that everywhere around the world, there is conflict that is not driven by civil war in between tribes among tribes. There is conflict that is driven by sinister geopolitical interest that is driven by countries such as the Western imperialists, as well as the current European Union countries that are pushing for war because that's how they survive. Their machinery is based on a war machinery, and as a result, so BRICS is coming with a completely, totally different offering and solution to the current world's crisis. They say we are not interested in war. We need peace. We want cooperation. We want to be self-determined. We want to have an environment where we want to strengthen multilateralism and a more just and democratic world order. This is a complete new and move away from the talk down to the nation states model that we are used to, that the US and the European the Union countries would do to mostly some of their weakest allies and partners. Here you're having a situation where BRICS says we want to have a situation where we are all included and we are all part of one agenda that speaks towards the ensuring that there could be solidarity, there could be cooperation, there could be mutual interest, there could be key priorities that are looking at furthering strategic partnership interests. Those partnership interests are centered around the one particular overarching theme. How do you grow your own sovereignty, give yourself sovereignty equality, where in your own sovereignty state you are not going to be dictated as a state? And I can give you back an example. In South Africa, we are currently undergoing the most severe, harshest situation politically, whereby South African political leaders do not have autonomy on decision making. You are told that they cannot decide certain things because certain vested interests, they would always refer to investors' interests, that investors are not agreeing to this particular perspective and point of view, and as a result, your policy is wrong. We say we want to give, for instance, free healthcare to our people. Suddenly, investors get upset with it and saying, this is not how you're supposed to be doing. We say we want to have an electricity environment in a South African context where we are nationalizing and we are continuing the national path of nationalization of production of electricity and the SOEs that are responsible for it. We are told that no, this is not the trajectory that you must undertake economically, because if you do that, all the investors are going to pull out of your economy. So we were not independent in the context of independence. And then BRICS says that we cannot, it's in their, point number 3 says, we affirm our commitment to the BRICS spirit of mutual respect and understanding, sovereignty, equality, solidarity, democracy, openness, as well as inclusiveness and collaboration and consensus. You will never hear this language with regards to the bigger superpowers that are currently in charge of the world. And when it comes to their world politics, all you hear is the opposite. How Africa should be developing, at what rate and pace. And when you start evaluating that particular language and you say, okay, fine, we want to develop at our rate and pace, but the development becomes a trajectory development that is actually forced upon you. We have a country like South Africa. The only form of development we see, if multinational companies come into South Africa, they are not interested in infrastructure that is geared towards developing people. They want the railway from the mine to the port. That's it. In between, make sure that you protect and you give your sovereignty security over that railway so that they can move their goods and minerals and resources that they are extracting out of our economy. In between, there should not be factories, there should not be production, there should not be communities benefiting. An issue of BEE is currently being attacked because Black people are not supposed to be benefiting. As a result, it's a policy that accordingly does not agree to the WTO, which is the World Trade Organization rules, etc. And then it goes further, where we are so under, duress to point where even when our trajectory of energy decision and solution, I come from an energy environment, when we said, why can't we continue utilization of our coal resources in any manner and form we want in order to build our economy? We are told that we should be decarbonizing. We should be closing out any opportunities of working on coal, and we should move away from a coal, which means these people, all that they are interested in is actually entrenching us into global debt system that is going to literally dissipate and destroy our economy. Furthermore, it's going to create problems whereby there would be no security economically, there would be no financial security, there would be no cultural, as well as a exchange of a better life for all, environment where we should be enjoying the benefits and the wealth, as well as the fruit of our country and the resources and the minerals. So, BRICS is a complete new dynamic power shift, which, in my article today, when I penned it, I looked at how has BRICS literally become this most incredibly, catastrophic heat towards the US, because, within the US environment, they never ever thought a group of mainly third world, overlooked, non-European countries would come together and challenge the current global hegemony and the system of global politics as well as global economy and financial control. Now you have BRICS. They have the concentration of the minerals, they have the concentration of the human resources, they have the concentration of the capital, and they have the superpowers like the China as well as the Russia, which is one of the largest country in the world. If you look at the span and breadth of Russia and its mineral deposits, it's an incredible thing. You go to China, you see the same thing. So we're in a situation where if only our leaders could understand what stands up in front of them from a opportunity point of view, we would have a far better life, and we would have a South Africa whereby no child sleeps with hunger. There would be no under illiteracy in our country. There will be no underdevelopment, and there will be a proper sharing of wealth. Not to the point where they feel that when we say we must share the wealth of the economy, it means we must take away from the multinational companies and make sure that they don't have wealth. There will always be a sharing whereby bigger companies will always have a bigger share of the economic pie. But what about the lives of the ordinary people? So I would say BRICS has really, it's rewriting the rules. I mean, some of their declarations are incredible. When you look at them, it will take ages for some of the leaders to study and embody the ethos and the principles as well as the values that have been actually placed into the crafting as well as the development of these particular outcomes. This is the challenge to the current, unipolar world and the current
yeah,
order.
can I just stop you there for a moment, because I'd like Raymond's comment on this, because I think from what Adil is saying as well, I think what is so important for South Africa, Raymond, as a founding member of BRICS, to be able to take full benefit, to be able to take advantage of where South Africa is positioned as far as BRICS is concerned. And there is the sentiment that is expressed that it is disheartening to note that since last year, since the BRICS summit was held in South Africa, not a single deal or project from any of these opportunities has materialized. And South Africa seems to be missing critical openings in what BRICS has to offer this country, simply because we don't know where we stand. Do we align ourselves with the West? The Adil speaks about investors as well. Many of these investors, possibly from Europe and the Western nations. Now, just looking at where do we position so that we benefit fully, and what Adil is saying is important: infrastructure development, all of this, one needs to consider.
Yeah. No, thank you for that question. I would also challenge the narrative that there's not been any single deal struck. Um, Quite recently now, there's been a deal in terms of exporting of avocados, and people might see it, it's nothing to China. I mean, South Africa alone, as a country, would not even have sufficient avocados to export to China. So we'd have to go into and tap into some of the African continent to do that. Similarly to other products. There's also another deal that has been also struck with again with China, where South Africa is exporting a certain product as well. It's a product. It's not a mineral, by the way. So it's a product. So there's been, and I'm just making reference to the two for now. I mean, there's been a pile, and people can go through and do that. But what I also want to say is that we have, as South African leaders, we have to be intentional. Our business leaders, our government leaders, and of course civil society leaders and players would have to be intentional about what we want. So, for example, the BRICS Business Women Alliance has been having bilateral meetings with all the member states. So what they did there was to look at what is the trade balance between each of the member countries, and we find South Africa to be at a negative trade balance. And at the moment, we're working towards how do we get to an even trade balance with these countries, and what can we do? And there's about 6 to 8 projects. There's more projects, but there are about 6 to 8 projects that the alliance is working on in terms of goods that would be exported to these member states. In December, we're also going to be having another session with India, the Indian Business Chamber of Commerce and other business players in India to discuss some of the bilateral trade agreements. During the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, there were a number of deals that were sealed there among South Africa and Russia. So those that are saying nothing has been done, it's particularly around again a Western narrative media approach that says nothing has been done. But I do want to say that also our business leaders, I mean, we've got the BRICS Business Council as well, which looks into big business also. Our business leaders would have to also exploit and explore some of the market there. And I'll tell you, I mean, in Russia, a lot of Western countries pulled out of the Russian market. And currently, in my last visit to Russia, I was speaking to a number of Russians, and they were saying, look, there's a vacuum here, not only in business, but also in employment in terms of labor, because those that were working in Russia and have got those particular expertise have pulled out in the Russian market, and they've left a vacuum, and they are not able to fill it. So there's a gap there that needs to be explored and explored, but we're not doing anything about it. No one is taking an intentional approach towards bridging that gap. So as South Africans, we also have to be intentional about what we want, and that I think that has been one of the key challenges in South Africa, that we've not been intentional about what we want and what is it that we want to drive within the BRICS relations.
Yes, Adil, I think the one issue and what we've seen with global institutions like the World Bank, the IMF, and also in terms of Western Europe, the G7 countries, the United States of America, the carrot and stick approach that has been used for a very, very long time. And one needs to be aware that this has been the case for a very, very long time. And even we've seen not very long ago the whole AGOA debate that had taken place as well, looking at South Africa, where its position has been. And just from a South African perspective, how do we find that balance between being a fully fledged BRICS member state and benefiting from the greater objectives of BRICS, and at the same time, how do we position ourselves against the likes of Western Europe, the likes of the United States of America?
I think Raymond sealed it very well when he said that we have to be intentional, and I would have wished that he is the man leading the entire process of BRICS, because right now, some of the key players within the BRICS, South African environment are not doing their part. Right? We could write, we could critique, we could say, we could propose solutions, but very little of it translates in terms of sealing of those particular key strategic deals that are required in order to really move our economy and shape it forward. And the other thing is, the whole BRICS, South African leg of it does itself a lot of disjustice. There's no communication. People know very little of what is happening. I mean, you've just mentioned some of these deals that are currently being signed and sealed. Nobody has a clue of them. And it's like it's kept like a secret. It's like only, it's like mushroom. They say keep them in the dark and just feed them a lot of manure for them to grow. And as the public, were kept really completely away from what is going on. And it's a disinjustice to the fact that we have leaders that are supposed to be representatives of society, not for themselves or not for their own interest. They are supposed to be communicating things that they are doing for the people. So I'm extremely impressed that Raymond has actually even articulated it. And it's good that he is really heading the youth association that is within the BRICS alliance, and ensuring that some of these things can be done. What we need to see going further in terms of these projects being realized is, we have the BRICS Bank, for instance, that has the current environment where they've made available over, I mean, the last time I checked, they had about $80 billion in terms of investment. Why has South Africa not applied for that entire fund of BRICS to say we need that money in order to develop our infrastructure, and with it, bring in all the capabilities that is required for ports, for roads, for infrastructure, for housing, for education, for telecommunication, for all other infrastructure related projects. So, it's one thing to hear that our leaders are working, but it's another thing to know what they are delivering. Things like the major deals that are done between BRICS partner countries, that is expected. It's part of the bilaterals that are currently run by for instance, the Department of International Relations and Cooperation. DERCO is sitting with all of these mandates and bilaterals that they should have been actioning and finalizing. But what happens in the interim? They are not doing their job, So yes, we have to be critical about the role. It's about time that as South African leaders, we get accustomed to be held accountable. When people must ask us in their faces, at points they must be angry and beat us up as leaders for not doing what is supposed to be done for their best interest. So, going forward, I would hope that with some of these projects happening, you're going to see a lot of more agency happening. And Raymond has articulated it, to be deliberate. I think we should take that as a key point and really visionary statement to say, and I'm going to be very critical. The current old crowd that is running government has no ability to being deliberate, because they've reached their level where they're just waiting for their paycheck and for God's mercy to appear on them, and they could be in the next life. So they're not working for us in this life anymore. They are working for their departure. So we need far much more greater younger people of the caliber of Raymond, who could now start being deliberate in his visionary statement to say, let's go out there and take this on and make sure that we become deliberate in what we are going to exploit, as much as all other economies are exploiting us in South Africa, on multilateral opportunities available within the BRICS blocks of countries. Huge amount of opportunities. We should not be a poor country. We should not be a country still suffering unemployment, levels of inequality, levels of poverty. No, we should be a country that is thriving at the rate of what the current Middle Eastern countries are doing, the Dubai, the Saudi Arabia, your Qatar, your, Malaysia, Singapore, your China and everything. I get so ashamed these days when I even see videos, whether it's TikTok or YouTube, of the developments that the Chinese economy has done for their people. And yet these are what? Socialist countries working on a different flavor of capitalism, whereby there is not a single outright owner of anything. There is no big multi-billionaire and investor personality. No, it's the Chinese government being deliberate in creating infrastructure, creating an economy that empowers its people. They're creating cities that can only, some people are saying at an analyst level, futurists are saying some of these cities could only be imagined in 200 years to come. China is already implementing them. Bridges. It's incredible what they're doing. But they've realized that to tap into the human spirit for development, you have to keep them busy and give them the opportunity to experience miracles in their own lifetime. We don't have that scenario in South Africa. The issues that are plaguing us, we should not even be calling ourselves a BRIC partner, because our economy is not growing at the rate of all other BRICS levels. We should not be saying that we are interested in being a big BRICS ongoing. We should have actually replaced that BRICS maybe with something else, given the S to somebody else in the BRICS member states. So some of these things are very important, and I'm glad that, Raymond, you've brought up this point that the deliberateness is critical, and people should start being deliberate. We cannot allow the status quo to continue, and then every year we have people going to conferences, and when they come back with nothing except having enjoyed good conferences as well as lounging. But when you talk about tangible deliverables, we don't see much of it. I would like to see a scenario. I wrote an article last year about BRICS, and I said, even in the article, I articulated a level of about 7 key strategic priority projects that are available that should have been exploited today. None of them today have been reported about. I've inquired with all the relevant stakeholders in government, in the SOEs. What is the progress? None of them has happened. So you can see that there is no deliberateness in relation to ensuring that things can start happening.
Yes, Adil. In fact, Raymond, I see time obviously is going very fast. Just from what Adil is saying, how can South Africa take full advantage of being a BRICS member state? And Adil mentioned so many issues where he says there have been a lot of missed opportunities. But going forward, where do we position ourselves and how do we take full advantage?
Yeah, look, again, I mean, everything has to have an intention, so like I said, there are numerous opportunities in the BRICS member states. Now we've got UAE, you've got Iran and Saudi in terms of oil. That would relieve some of the burden that we have in terms of the crude oil and petrol prices in South Africa. So there's a energy issue that we're facing, and Russia can assist in terms of nuclear and other gas and so forth and so on. Brazil, their energy mix is almost 50% now. It's we can tap into that in terms of getting those expertise and resources in South Africa. So there's I mean, China. I mean, Adil mentioned it in terms of the so what we should be tapping into in China is the technology transfer and skills transfer in terms of some of the infrastructure that they have put together in their countries. And India as well in terms of the ICT space. Just a couple of weeks ago, I was there was a guy from India who presented to me some drone technology that could solve a lot of our problems, including border control, security, and at no human error there's drone technology that monitors all of those things that could also assist in terms of infrastructure damages and in your likes of your Transnet and Eskom. So there's a lot of opportunities that we need to tap into. But again, we have to be intentional. There has to be an intention towards that particular insourcing of these resources and opportunities.
Thank you for that, Raymond. Adil, final thoughts?
But I think my final thoughts, look, I go back to the last year's article. And in the last year's article, I just said, yeah, the very few quick win strategic areas of economic collaboration with BRICS country partnership. 1, it was oil and gas opportunities. 2, great upgrade infrastructure. 3, I spoke about roads, rail, sea freight, energy transport infrastructure. 4, it was ports and harbor facilities. 5, I spoke about the coal, gas, nuclear, and hydropower stations. 6, it was renewable energy, smart cities projects. And number 7, it was the hydrogen economy project. 8, it was a strategic economic infrastructure projects. And then 9, it was nuclear science and technology. These were a simple, straightforward opportunities that our government should have just taken a list. And as I said, we're not expecting people to be rocket science now. If they don't know how to, just take a list and saying, guys, how do we implement this? What is required to do this? We have these partners that are engaging us under the BRICS umbrella. How can we bring them on board with their capabilities? Not only that, we've got the BRICS Bank. How do we utilize the capital that is sitting within the BRICS Bank, where we have soft loan environment, take these loans, develop our economy and develop our people, and make sure that there's skills transfer and there's knowledge creation, as well as an IP environment and a whole lot of other things, whereby there will be incomes and jobs creation. There will be the lessening of unemployment. Poverty will definitely be dealt with. So, sometimes we speak as if we confuse people when we're saying things are doable. Here is a list that nobody has ever followed. They could even say, no, there was no plan in place. Yeah, here's a list. This is 9 priorities that could have now been already been attended to. That could have now, we'll be talking about how those deals are now being structured between country partners as well as the BRICS country, the BRICS itself as a body, and how they can bring in the synthesis of making sure that these projects are literally coming and kicking ground and starting to happen in South Africa. So we don't want to go too far. Opportunities are here and are available. How do we attend to them and deal with them?
Well, I think, that list that you mentioned, Adil, obviously absolutely important. I mean, it's not a complete list, but I think this is in fact, it's all encompassing, in fact, covers many of the areas and the challenges that we face as a country. Raymond, I'll leave the last word to you. We've got about 2 minutes.
No, thanks. No, just to say, look, there are a lot of opportunities within BRICS, and I think young people should actively engage in these opportunities. We shouldn't wait for anyone to do it. And I know, at the high level, the government would have to champion some of these opportunities. But let us get out there. Let's join the South African BRICS Youth Association and other platforms that work within the BRICS framework. To learn more and engage and maybe even on an individual capacity, try to exploit some of those opportunities. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much for that, Raymond, and also to your Crown Prince Adil and Nchabeleng. We do appreciate both of you taking time out this evening with us right here on Salam Media. All the best to you guys. Assalamu alaikum. Keep well and all the best.
Thank you.
Walaikum salam, and thank you so much.
Yes.
Raymond Mtlala this evening right here on Salam Media. Well, that is just part one of the discussion that we have had this evening right here on Salam Media. Next up, and this is also a critical topic, particularly aimed at Muslim marriages. We're talking about the Muslim marriage certificates. Is this going to be a legal game changer or not? Or is it just smokes and mirrors at this point in time? We have got a panel assembled immediately after this. We'll be back.